Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Uncanny Treks. This week, Matt and Bob are talking about Fantastic Four Grand Design from 2019. It is a nice little dessert to our coverage of the Kirby run in the Silver Age of FF. I am Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Matt, how you doing this evening?
Doing all right, Bob. The best way I would describe this is a companion piece to classic Fantastic Four.
It is.
If you're picking this up solely thinking you're going to sit down and read it without any further instruction, you're not going to enjoy it. Trust me. You have to have a ton of knowledge about Fantastic Four to be able to get into this book.
It's very pretty. And I would say in an interesting way that you maybe need to have read fewer comics than the X-Men Grand Design to understand this one. Because this does reference some other stuff in FF and some other stuff in Marvel lore, but it's mostly the Kirby run. There's other stuff too, but it's mostly the Kirby run. But that said, it's way harder to follow than the X-Men Grand Design, even though it's dealing with a smaller frame of reference.
Way harder to follow. I'm not 100% sure of the intention because it's different from X-Men Grand Design in that this book will have a single panel or two tell an entire issue of Fantastic Four.
Which somewhat happens in X-Men Grand Design, but is a lot more severe in FF Grand Design.
Here you see this so frequently, but then other story beats or other comics, they dedicate almost an entire page or 2 pages just to that issue. Which I understand if it's a more important story, especially the more important story beats. I want to understand what the selection process was, why they went with certain things over others. Did they base it on which issues were more famous and which ones weren't? Some of the choices they make in this, they don't flow as well as they do with X-Men.
It's also interesting that a little bit unlike the X-Men Grand Design, which we talked about in our first issue, our first episode on X-Men Grand Design, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more in the later two. There are some continuity issues potentially with X-Men Grand Design, not in a bad way, but in an interesting way, where it maybe makes it problematic. Whereas here, Tom Scioli, the writer, artist, letterer, colorist for this, wants to bring it all together and give you an end to the Fantastic Four story in a way that maybe I'll think about this differently when we get to the end of X-Men Grand Design. But I don't remember X-Men Grand Design ending so decisively.
This definitely does have an ending, and it's not canon.
It's almost an ultimate Fantastic Four.
Correct, yes. Because even at the beginning here, what we're about to talk about, even the beginning is slightly different than what we already know about from other issues and things that have dropped in the future.
A couple other things to say just as table setting, Matt. So one of the things that makes this more challenging is that the panel size is much smaller. And to your point, you're having, on average, many more panels than even X-Men Grand Design. You're doing 5 panel rows, which is crazy. And so it really is, you could use the postage stamp label for X-Men Grand Design too, but it's fair to talk about Fantastic Four Grand Design being on a postage stamp scale. So that can make it a little challenging and a little abrupt to read, especially when it's each postage stamp is a different issue sort of thing. And I also wanted to ask if you've ever read anything by Tom Scioli before. The thing he's probably most famous for is Transformers versus G.I. Joe.
I've never read anything by him. No, I went and pulled up his resume.
Scioli does have the reputation as being a Jack Kirby guy. Not that he doesn't do anything original. He does stuff that's original, but he is influenced by Jack Kirby in his art and comics. Jersey Gods is one of his comics. A lot of his comics are riffs and combinations of Kirby ideas, although he certainly brings his own energy to it as well. That's why he's doing FF Grand Design versus why Pisker is doing X-Men Grand Design, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I want to pinpoint, too, that we were saying with these books, if you've read the comics, as you're going through the Grand Design, it's like you have this memory of the comic and what happened in it. But because we don't have perfect memories, we're taking what's in the Grand Design and molding it to fit with what this narrative wants us to have. Unfortunately, that does not go as well as it did with X-Men. Because, like you said before, there's just so many like little stories that they're trying to condense, it doesn't flow. Bob, let's get into this.
All right. The first thing I wanted to point out, and I don't actually know if this is a continuity error because I don't care about the Watcher and can't be bothered to care about the Watcher. But on page 2, they do make the Watcher responsible for Galactus's creation, which is news to me. Maybe that's why the Watcher takes this non-intervention stance, because he saved Galactus and then it led to Galactus being Galactus.
Technically, the creator of Galactus, the Watcher is Batman, and Galactus is the Joker.
That's an interesting thing to begin on. And then to get to a positive right away, on page 4, we have my, I think, favorite panel of the issue. This is a reference to one of our favorite Kirby Fantastic Four issues, the one set in ancient Egypt, right, where Kang or Ramatut is a pharaoh. And we see Ramatut with his invisible queen, which is Sue Storm. She's not visible, but she's got all the pharaoh queen paraphernalia on. It's really cool.
If you'd read the Fantastic Four comics and you know who Ramatut was, Ramatut took Invisible Woman as his queen, and you know why the Fantastic Four are all in the past. Had you not read the comic, it's what's going on here?
Yeah.
I can't believe you skipped over something at the beginning of this comic that foreshadow, which you complain about later on.
Oh, it's just the Celestials. The Celestials aren't Power Rangers. They're totally different.
Not the Celestials, but the coloring of the astronaut costumes. You didn't catch that? That they're all different?
I don't care as much about that. It's not the coloring of the astronaut. As long as the FF aren't writing robots that are based on animals that combine into a bigger man. If they did that, I would have a problem.
But you have to admit, though, Bob, there's a common trend here. Come on. They're all wearing uniforms of different colors. When do astronauts ever wear different colored uniforms like that? You got Invisible Woman in a pink outfit.
Honestly, it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it would, Bob. Making sure that female astronaut has a pink astronaut outfit. Isn't that right, Bob?
Definitely the Human Torch should be in pink.
There you go. Thank you.
What Matt's pointing to is that this comic ends with a Power Rangers riff that I deeply hate. And I hate so much that it makes me hate the whole comic.
But throughout the issues...
That's pointing out that there's a Power Rangers motif throughout the issues, which... I guess I was able to ignore it as I was reading.
Bob was able to ignore it, and I was getting high off of it. That was the only nostalgia bait I had in this book. I was, Power Ranger stuff.
Matt, did I ever tell you the time I came the closest to stopping reading superhero comics as an adult?
When was that, Bob?
I was listening to an interview with a guy, and he was writing Power Rangers comics. I don't think I knew that, or I wouldn't have listened to the interview. But he's also a guy who written some creator-owned comics and written some Batman comics that I liked. And interview with, I'm pretty sure it was Kyle Higgins. Interview with Kyle Higgins. Sure, I'll listen to an interview with Kyle Higgins. What does he have to say? And I find out that he's writing, and this is maybe 10 years ago, he's writing the new Power Rangers series. And he's talking about how he's going to write the new Power Rangers series and how he wants to go in depth on their characters. And he's basically just saying all the same cliches about it that you would say about writing if you were taking over Fantastic Four, or you were taking over Spawn, or you were taking over X-Men. And in that moment, I had to confront how cliche the whole industry is and how interchangeable the Power Rangers are with Batman, are with Spawn, are with the Fantastic Four. And that hurt me, Matt. It wounded me. And I know it's all bad. I know I'm not wrong. I know I'm wrong to hate the Power Rangers more than I hate the Marvel and DC superheroes. But I do hate the Power Rangers, Matt. And I don't like being confronted with Power Rangers crap in my Marvel and DC comics. Is that so wrong?
That's okay, Bob. It's okay. But I just want to point out that there is definitely a motif throughout this entire book of Power Rangers nostalgia.
Tom Scioli, in addition to being a Jack Kirby fanboy, is clearly a Power Rangers fan.
He did the whole Transformers G.I. Joe thing, so he obviously grew up with the same kind of toys and junk we had, probably.
I picked that out as the thing that you are the most likely to have read. Some people do claim that Transformers versus G.I. Joe is really good, but I'm never going to read it because I hate Transformers for the same reason I hate Power Rangers. That's stupid stuff for kids, unlike serious Marvel and DC superheroes.
I don't like Transformers. I don't even know why. I could never get into Transformers. I'm good with G.I. Joe. Now, there's something about the robots having the emotions.
My theory is that we're slightly too young. Alan really liked Transformers, and I think it was because he was the right age for that movie to hit him.
Oh, gotcha.
We're maybe just a year and a half, maybe even 6 months too young, if that makes sense. That's my theory. Maybe it's wrong.
Also, too, in the grand scheme of things, what it boiled down to was the G.I. Joe movie was at the video store.
And the Transformers movie wasn't.
It was probably out. And I picked up the G.I. Joe, went and watched it over and over.
To confess to listeners, I did G.I. Joe and Power Rangers a lot when I was a kid, but I just don't feel any need to reconnect to that. That was childish and stupid that I liked it when I was a kid. I don't feel the need to co-host a 300 episode podcast about it.
And me, guys, I like to connect with them. The exact opposite of what Bob just said.
Matt's a much more matured, adjusted guy
Yeah.
than Bob. It turns out. It turns out. All right, Matt. The next thing I wanted to point out was on page 5. We see, and this is a reference to John Hickman's Shield series, where Shield is this trans-historical secret society of scientists. We might read the Hickman Shields one day. But one detail that's interesting that I do not think is in the Hickman Shield series, but is that they use Captain America's shield as their emblem. That was a rather interesting choice.
That is interesting. The whole idea of bringing in the Shield as this long-spanning secret organization is neat. I did get a chance to read some of Hickman's run on that. I did enjoy it. I don't think I finished it, but I did get through. There's several trades, weren't there?
There's only a couple of Shield. There's also another series called Secret Warriors that's not unrelated, but is also a little different. There's more trades of Secret Warriors. There's maybe 6 trades of Secret Warriors versus maybe 2 or 3 of S.H.I.E.L.D. The Hickman Shield, the famous thing they did there is they show like Leonardo da Vinci having to stop.
Oh, yeah. All these old school scientists and stuff are actually part of the organization. That's right. They're stopping Galactus throughout history. That was fun stuff.
The next thing I wanted to call attention to, Matt, was, and it continues my theme of liking Invisible Woman quite a lot in these issues. So I liked her as an invisible queen in ancient Egypt. I also like her as a shoplifter.
Controversial. She reminds me of Breaking Bad, who had the shoplifting thing.
Oh,
Marie had it in the first season, and they gave up on it.
They're minerals, Marie.
That's exactly what this would have been had this been in the original. Who would have forgotten she was a shoplifter?
But Matt, to go from things that I approve of and you disapprove of to something I think we'll both disapprove of, were you horrified as I was on page 23 when the Fantastic Four's own Mr. Mxyzptlk, the Impossible Man, when he strikes a centerfold pose? I was horrified.
That's pretty disturbing, but I always forget that he's literally Mr. Mxyzptlk.
The Invisible Queen, my favorite panel of the issue, my favorite postage stamp of the issue. But there's some really heavy competition on page 25. On the bottom row of that page, we get 2 crazy things. We get Reed and Ben unmasking Hatemonger and seeing that it's Adolf Hitler's face.
All right.
Then we get Thing rocking Spider-Man, like beating the crap out of Spider-Man. It's funny because it is visually paired. So the leftmost panel is Reed and Ben reacting to seeing Hitler under Hatemonger's mask. Whereas the rightmost panel is like battle damaged Peter, where you can see his broken teeth and his black eye from where Ben Grimm punched him through the mask.
He's sticking his hand up in front of his neck too, doing one of those stop man. He's saying, "Not a villain, I'm a good guy," because Thing's just been whacking him to death. He's missing a tooth.
Speaking of interesting conjunctions, Matt, this is going ahead a little more, but on 28. We have on this page, I don't know if you remember this image, but it still haunts me from the original Jack Kirby run, that Jack Kirby draws Reed underwater in a manta ray form. Of all the things from all the Jack Kirby issues of Fantastic Four to include, Tom Scioli includes manta ray Reed.
Well, so stupid in the original issue.
But the interesting thing is on that same page of 28, not only do you have manta ray Reed, but in the next row you have Thing in a Beatles wig, which is one of my favorite images from the Kirby Fantastic Four. In a weird way, the unmasking of Hitler and the bruised face of Peter Parker are paired. Here it's a little bit the Manta Ray Reed and Beatles thing are paired. I find that really amusing composition.
There's literally on that page alone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different issues of Fantastic Four.
Wow.
That gives you an idea of how much these cover.
And the standard number of, it's 5 rows of 5 panels each is the standard. Now, he cuts that up a little bit. So on the bottom rows, you've got some panels that are 2 postage stamps width.
This is a good page to explain this to the listeners, because you literally, on this single page, you have Sue and Johnny's father revealing himself.
Oh, the Invincible Man, the prior page.
You've got Reed as the Manta Ray. You've got Atuma to reveal. You've got them stopping Submariner. You've got Ben in the wig. You've got the Gideon guy convincing them all that they're selling out each other. You've got them going to college with Johnny. You've got the Thing playing football. And you have the reveal of Dragon Man all in one page. If you are thinking about going through this and you haven't read Fantastic Four, it's not easy to follow.
That was on page 28 in the first issue. Then another wild example is if you go to 29, the next page. So you keep this 5 rows of, on average, 5 panels. But on the third row on page 29, he takes the third row and he divides the third row into 2 more rows. So it's just an absolutely insane number of panels, right?
Yeah, at least it's primarily telling the story of the Frightful Four for the most part, but also their team ups they had with the X-Men and the Avengers.
To go down to the next page, so this is on page 30, you get a relatively big splash panel compared to these postage stamps of the wingless wizard as the Frightful Four fights the Fantastic Four. And what do you think of how Scioli does the wingless wizard's helmet design?
It contains his brain. His brain is in a
Yeah.
vat on top of his head, but it's all
On the one hand, it makes sense. I'm not criticizing Scioli for this design because you think of the pink color and the weird shape of the helmet. It makes sense to radicalize it by having the brain be in the helmet like this. But it's also super gross and super disturbing.
It gives them an easy spot to hit if they want to. It seems like it would be
Yeah.
damaging to just smack him right there.
The caption for this panel says, "The wizard is extra smart because his helmet has an extra brain built into it."
Oh, there you go, Bob. Now we know.
Yeah. So if you hit the extra brain, that's not going to slow him up that much.
No, it doesn't control those faculties. You should be good.
All right, Matt. So what was your favorite page or your favorite panel or your favorite postage stamp on page 32?
Bob, on page 32, they did take the time to show Ben just wrecking Doctor Doom's hands, which was one of my favorite scenes from the original issue. Classic. And I like the way he does it here because he's going back to his thing form at the beginning of this segment. And the original, like I said, they capture that horror look that happens when he transforms, which I thought was cool in the original as well.
It's a really good transformation scene. And this is a good example of how Scioli will take some time and devote some real estate to an important moment. This isn't really a criticism because you can't fit everything in. He's condensing 80 plus comics into 2 issues, but it does leave out one of my favorite lines from the original moment in FF40 where Reed says something to the effect of, he's going to be even more dangerous after this because you've hurt his pride.
Yeah.
It's a cool experiment, but it also draws attention to the limits of the experiment.
He dedicated 10 panels to this one scene in this one comic. Whereas, like we said in the other issue, think of how many issues he covered in one panel. That one page is crazy.
The last point I wanted to make from this first issue, which was a sweet moment, is we have a little bit, it's not the climax, but we can think of it as the climax for this issue for our purposes of the famous wedding of Reed and Sue. We have Namor walk Sue down the aisle for the wedding with Reed, which I think is a sweet addition.
Yeah, that's sweet.
All right, Matt. Shall we jump ahead to issue number 2?
Issue number 2, Bob.
This is jumping into pages 10 through 12 of issue number 2. But controversially, Matt, when we covered the Kirby run of Fantastic Four, you're not the world's biggest fan of Fantastic Four number 51, This Man, This Monster, which people generally tend to think of as an all-time classic.
They even reproduced it at the end of the trade I have.
I was curious, what did you think about Scioli's reimagining and condensation of that issue? Did it change your perspective on the issue at all? Did you prefer Scioli's version? Do you prefer the original? I was curious. What's your thoughts?
I'm okay with this version. It's nothing. It's better in the short form, honestly.
I figured you might think that because you thought the gimmick didn't work at a 20-page.
The issue is a short form story.
Also get another cool transformation scene like we saw with Scioli rendering what happens in Fantastic Four 40 when Ben transforms back. The second thing, we see his transformation. Then another question, Matt, I guess I should remember this because I like the Power and the Peril, and I didn't put this in the notes, but I'm looking on page 22 in the second issue. And so Scioli's redoing the Power and the Peril story, which is the story where Dr. Doom steals the power cosmic from the Silver Surfer. You have another confrontation between Ben and Doom on this page, which is like the first since the big fight in 40 where Ben crushes Doom's hands. Now that he's jacked up by the power cosmic, we see Doom crush Ben's hands. Do you remember if that detail is in the original comic? I have to confess I don't.
I don't remember that at all. When I was reading this, that did strike me.
If that's an addition, that's a really good addition.
It's tit for tat in a sense. I like that.
Overtly, what Ben's humiliation of Doom isn't really that followed up on in the Kirby run, which is a little bit of a shame. Maybe that's because at that point, Kirby and Stan Lee weren't talking very much anymore. But it is nice that Scioli doing this can add some tighter continuity in places and add some more payoffs in places if that, in fact, is what he's doing. If that's new, maybe that should be my favorite moment. But another favorite moment of mine would be on page 24, a lovely image where Crystal has frozen Blastar. Then she's sitting on frozen Blastar's shoulder gloating. I love that panel so much. It really cracked me up.
Yeah, the crazy characters that we're introduced to in the second volume, the second issue picks up, but then again, it also has some crappy moments.
We're not going to cover everything, listeners, for sake of time, but we get through the high points of the Kirby run, and then we don't do that much stuff beyond the Kirby run, but we do a fair amount of stuff beyond the Kirby run, and we do Secret Wars, for example. But one thing I wanted to highlight was an interesting thing on page 31, where we see Galactus fight the High Evolutionary. And I guess that is from a Bill Mantlo and George Perez comic. I've never read it, wasn't familiar with it. But that was a cool escalation of stakes to have Galactus versus the High Evolutionary.
That was an interesting showdown.
You even have Galactus do the Bane move on the High Evolutionary, where he breaks his back over his shoulder on page 31.
This dude grew up with some of the same stuff we did, and there's a lot of
totally
nostalgia
He
ripping here.
might be slightly older than us, but he is nostalgic for a lot of the same thing. Then some things that at least I am embarrassed about being nostalgic for.
Not I, said Matt.
Matt, we've already talked about this. Then on page 32 and 33 comes the moment that, up to this moment, I definitely thought this was not as well done as X-Men Grand Design, but I liked it. I had bought this. I was planning on keeping it in my collection. Then we hit the scene at the bottom of page 32 and the top of page 33 that was, no, I hate this comic. I'm selling this comic. I'm never going to read this comic again until I started a podcast with my good friend Matt. That's when the Black Panther and his friends show up in their Power Rangers cats and attack Galactus, and then form into, what do they call it? The Panther God Panthrax Pantherion.
It's really cool. Just to make sure the listeners understand, they have to do a Panther roll call at the beginning. So you got Panther roll call, you got T'Challa, Black Panther, got Pink Panther Shuri, Yellow Panther Zuni, Green Panther Katana, and Blue Panther Joshua Itobo. All of these are actual characters from the comics.
Zuni and Katana are supporting characters in Jack Kirby's 1970s Black Panther run.
Does this appear anywhere else in comic history?
No, this is totally...
It has not. But every time I look it up, everyone's saying it's a Voltron reference, which it is in a sense. Power Rangers is a copy of Voltron. Yeah, so dude may have been referencing Voltron here, but I don't know. You had a bigger problem with this than I did, and I don't know if it's the Power Rangers.
The color coding thing is the Power Rangers.
They didn't do that in Voltron. They didn't call out their names and stuff.
I think they are color coded, but I don't think it's in the name. Maybe I'm misremembering because I haven't seen this stuff in 30 years.
Disney Plus, there's a cartoon waiting for you.
Oh, God.
And we are the podcast ready to review it.
For me, it's partially that I don't like Power Rangers. I'm deeply embarrassed that I did Power Rangers when I was a kid. But it's not just that it's a Power Rangers reference. It's that it's a Power Rangers reference that, in my mind, is tarnishing one of my favorite characters. I love the Black Panther. This makes the Black Panther childish and stupid. And I like Shuri as a supporting character. I want Shuri to be in the Black Panther mythos. To me, it's not just that it's a Power Rangers reference, but it's tarnishing the Black Panther.
It's tarnishing the Black Panther, Bob. So you're saying that the Black Panther would never create a big robot like this?
He just wouldn't have an annoying roll call color-coded.
So it's the roll call that got you. That's what destroyed it.
More than anything else, it's the roll call.
Dang. How are we going to know who these people were, Bob, if they didn't do a roll call?
That's a good question, Matt. And we can also illustrate my hypocrisy, Matt, with your favorite panel. So your favorite panel comes on page 36. And here we have another TV show reference, one of Bob's favorite TV shows. But curiously, Bob loves it when Reed is put into one of his favorite TV shows. He just hates it when Black Panther is forced into one of his least favorite.
Yeah, the dude went out of his way to make sure that he made the coolest prisoner reference with Reed Richards being trapped after Battleworld.
Reed is trapped in a version of the prisoner's village, but it's Doom's village from the British 60s spy show, The Prisoner. It's great. And that's also, if you remember our coverage of the Silver Age listeners, that's a reference to a really good story in the 80s on Kirby, the Kirby FF run of the Latveria being presented the village from The Prisoner.
I want to do the prisoner sign now and say Doomsday instead of be seeing you.
It's Doom o'clock.
Yeah.
Then also, this is something we skipped, but later we stopped our coverage of the Kirby Fantastic Four run at The Prisoner. because it doesn't get any better than that. But Agatha Harkness is introduced in the later Kirby run, and we have Agatha showing up. In some ways, Scioli stops covering the Kirby Fantastic Four run about where we do, right? He has the big climax with Annihilus and the Negative Zone and the birth of Franklin. Then he does incorporate some of the more famous later stuff, like that prisoner story arc and Agatha Harkness showing up, along with when he's doing Secret War stuff and this future stuff at the end of the story. A lot of this is like 80s stuff. On the last page, Matt, we get to the Days of the Future Past X-Men, which, if you remember Days of the Future Past, Franklin is a big deal in. And Scioli relabels. We've got the last 4 X-Men. We've got Colossus, Storm, Wolverine, and Franklin. And the comic relabels them Franklin's Final Four.
Bob, as there was one area of controversy in this story that people brought up, because I went and read some reviews and things of this. It's implied that Namor is the actual father of Franklin. You have thoughts on that?
Where is that implied?
When Franklin's born, Johnny says that he has gills, so he's a mutant.
Oh. Interesting.
Then also the whole thing with when Reed goes to the prisoner world, Submariner gets with Invisible Woman.
Oh, yeah, and you have Namor saying, "You're handsome like your father."
There's a lot of implication there that he could be the father. I don't know how I feel about that. It would be fun if they did explore that later on. I don't think that's been explored before.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I can see why people might be bothered by it, but I don't mind.
I'm good with it. It's just a big change. That is one of the big things that people marked.
Yeah, I do like the dialogue of Ben's, "Wait a minute, is this normal? Benji's got gills." Then Reed's response is, "I should have known. It's my worst fear. He's a mutant." Then he kisses Sue and kisses Franklin.
Yeah.
It's an interesting angle, but yeah, I get why people are upset by it.
I don't think there's too many other things throughout this. I know you're upset with the Power Rangers piece, but we keep saying, I appreciated this book as I was reading the Kirby stuff because it gave me something to be, okay, this is what's happening. This is what I'm experiencing. Almost an outline or a summary of what's going on.
And I remember it helped you a little bit process the trauma of Crystal and Johnny's
Oh,
relationship.
yes, because this does a much better job with that. And when Johnny has to go and retrieve the Ultimate Nullifier, he spends a much longer time in that realm. And it's there that he develops these stronger feelings for Crystal and a bunch of other people.
Yeah. Matt, I guess the question we come to now is where to rank this. Where were you thinking?
We currently have a third comic list. Starting off, it's not better than, of course, X-Men number 1 through 19 from Kirby. So that's number 24 on our list. Avengers, the initial Avengers run from 1963, I don't think it's better than that.
But even to jump you down a little, even though I was critical of Avengers World and Avengers AI when we were reading them, partially because I was reading them for the 3rd time, but I was critical and I wanted them low. I do have to admit that although there's some very interesting stuff that Scioli is doing in these, I do find Avengers World and Avengers AI both more interesting than Fantastic Four Grand Design.
Well, with cohesive storytelling, these 2 books are good books. I know they're low on our list, but keep in mind, folks, we read a lot of comics, and we're not ranking anywhere near what we actually...
We mostly only rank stuff that is good enough to be interesting. It's either got to be pretty good or pretty awful to be interesting enough to discuss on the episode.
We only rank what we cover. What's interesting about Avengers AI, though, Bob, is that it ends the same way that the Power Rangers scenario that you dislike in this comic.
It does, but because it's not an overt thing and because I don't care about the Vision and have no emotional attachment to the Vision, I'm not bothered.
The lack of a roll call, Bob, is that what makes
the lack of a roll call also really helps, Matt. It really helps.
Even though I need to go back and read because there may have been a roll call because I remember correctly.
But they weren't pink Vision, yellow Vision, green Vision.
They were just whatever they could possibly represent with AI.
Not the awful slop producing chatbots we have now.
What they conceived of AI back in 2013.
Yeah. The AI we were promised versus the AI we have. Yeah. I would say it could still go above DC versus AEW, which is a similarly strange comic.
That was just a fun aside for us, honestly. Yeah. We love wrestling, and we said, hey, wonder what that's like. Then it is better than Gotham Knights as a whole. Because once again, you have to... If you want to know why Gotham Knights is so low on our list, folks, please just go listen to the coverage. We'll find something eventually that's worse.
Oh, yeah. There's some interesting things about all three of the Gotham Knights runs we read. So we don't, they're even the worst one, the AJ Lieberman one, is wild and it's interesting,
Yeah,
right?
so don't discount stuff just because it's on this list.
Okay, so it's now a 35 item list of things we've covered. We've got Avengers AI sitting at number 30. We've got FF Grand Design sitting at 31. We've got DC versus AEW at 32. And then holding down the bottom three spots, we've got those three early aughts runs on Gotham Knights.
All right, Bob's looking good. Yeah, so
Looking good.
overall, Grand Design, Fantastic Four, only if you've read the actual comics would I even pick this up. But
Yeah.
it is good for that.
Yeah.
It's a great companion
Like you said,
piece.
it's a great companion piece to the Kirby run specifically. As long as you've read the Kirby run, you're fine. But you definitely want to have read the Kirby or most of the Kirby run before you try it. And it helps listeners if you don't hate the Power Rangers. That also helps.
We're going to continue some coverage of the X-Men Grand Design.
I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Thanks for joining us for our FF Grand Design coverage. Look for further coverage of X-Men Grand Design coming to you soon.
Thanks for listening.